Hello and welcome to this informational video. This informational video will be on health representation. With me, I have a very knowledgeable person who is a notary, and he's also a good friend of mine who has agreed to do these interviews, which I really appreciate. So let me introduce Mr. Atif Nanji.
Thank you, Arnie.
Wow, I tell you, you've taken on a big job answering all these questions for me. I hope you know all this stuff.
I do, but still go easy on me.
Yeah, boy, I went through all of this stuff, and there is a lot to know. It is not an easy topic. There's a lot of nooks and crannies, if I can say it that way. There's a lot of simple things, and I can see people getting into complexities, because every family is different. I know, like, my family is different than your family dynamics, like the next family. So how they would fit into all of this, I really don't know. But you're the person that they would come to.
I hope so.
And they would get the answer. Because that's why I came to you, to get the answer. Because we've been through this with you. Not for ourselves, but for a friend. So let's get to the meat of this interview here. What is a representation agreement, or in particular, a health representation agreement?
So for me, the easiest way to explain it is a representation agreement is very similar to a power of attorney, except it is for health and personal care decisions. So it allows you to appoint somebody else, either one or more people, to represent you in health and personal care matters. So if you're ever in the hospital, you can't speak for yourself, the representative, the person you appoint, can make those decisions for you on your behalf.
Wow, okay. Now, with any type of these documents, some of them sort of overlap on each other. So what is the difference between a representation agreement and a power of attorney?
It's a very good question. A lot of people get it confused. A lot of people assume that power of attorney includes healthcare decision-making authority, but it doesn't. So the biggest difference is that a power of attorney is for legal and financial matters, so things like paying bills, doing taxes, selling property, dealing with insurance, investments, things of that nature. Whereas a representation agreement is strictly, or at least a Section 9 representation agreement, is strictly for healthcare matters and personal care matters.
Okay, right. Now, when we talk about these documents, one of the questions that always comes up is, who should have one of these agreements? So we're talking about health representation. So would a young person need one, or would an older person need one? How would you answer that?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say one person needs it when another person doesn't. Something can happen to you at any age. No matter how old or young you are, you could have health issues that could result in incapacitation, temporary or permanent. So it's hard to say that a young person wouldn't need something like this. However, I don't normally see a lot of young people doing it. Okay. It's usually people that are elderly, that are taking their personal planning more seriously, or maybe they've seen family members or friends go through health scares and maybe be in a position where family were locked out of the decision-making process, so they've kind of seen the worst, how bad it could get potentially. Or often when people are going into assisted living, sometimes they'll come in with their children, and
Sure.
That's the time when they'll get it done. And others just get it done along with their will and power of attorney. Some people will come in for a will, they'll end up doing the power of attorney, and then they'll get this done at the same time, so it's all kind of done and dealt with. They don't have to worry about it anymore.
Okay.
But any age is probably not a bad idea to get one done.
Yeah, and I know, like, a lot of people resist getting any of these documents because it's like giving up your personal identity, your personal freedom, your independence, if you want to call it that.
I guess in a sense, I can understand why people feel that way, but I really want people to know that, at least, especially with a representation agreement, it doesn't take any of your decision-making authority away from you. It's simply giving somebody else the authority to make those decisions, and only if you're not able to make those decisions yourself in the case of the representation agreement.
Good point. Good point. Okay. Now, every family is different. We've got families, okay, that get along. We got families that don't get along. And this is a question I think that everybody needs to know the answer to. And I don't know if in your capacity doing these documents for people, if you have to help people along with it, but choosing a representative, that's a very difficult job, because you have one family member that wants it all and another one who doesn't want anything.
Yeah.
And then you got everything in between.
Yeah, choosing a representative is can be tricky, especially for a parent who's maybe somebody appointing their spouse is kind of a no-brainer. But usually, when it comes down to appointing the children, that's where some of these considerations need to be made. I can understand families don't want to leave a particular child out, or sometimes a child may not be available. Maybe they live abroad. So the three key things I tell people to think about when appointing a representative is number one, trust. You have to trust that they're going to follow your wishes. Not just do what they think is right, but they have to follow your wishes and what they know, and to the best of their knowledge, what your beliefs and values are.
Right.
So that's the first one, is trust. Number two, capability. They need to be able to understand the kinds of tasks or questions that are going to be asked of them. So for example, if it's healthcare decisions, they need to at least have some basic knowledge. Nobody's going to be, we don't expect them to be experts, but they at least have to be, if they don't have the specific knowledge, at least be resourceful enough to find out, get more information before answering a question. And number three, availability. Just being available to act. It's not going to do you any good to appoint somebody that's that works 18-hour days and maybe has 5 kids and is always busy and maybe lives in another province, right? So choosing someone that's maybe lives a little bit closer, maybe that has a little bit, that's going to be available to act it when you need them, that's also important to consider as well.
Very good, very good. I was thinking like a family would, some families, would want to allocate a representative by seniority. In other words, the oldest child, the next oldest child, down the line. But for what you're just saying, that makes sense, because you have some family members that would live out of town, and the other ones that work extensive hours and not available.
Yeah, I mean, what you said, I see that all the time. I think that a lot of families feel that that obligation to appoint the eldest first. Maybe it's a sign of respect, which I can understand, but but yeah, I would urge people to think more about those other three things versus simply the age of the representative.
Okay, yeah, because some families might go by cultural beliefs as well, whereas like only the male gets to make the decision, not the female.
Yeah, I've seen that too, but more often I see it the other way around.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I think for healthcare decisions, I find, maybe not all the time, but I think a lot of the times parents might feel more comfortable with their daughters, or having, I think,
equality.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, so I mean that was a good answer. That was more than I expected. So I appreciate you giving that information. How about appointing multiple representatives? Now, would they be acting as one, or would they be acting separately based on if one were to die, then the next one would take over? How does all that work?
It can be either way. So when appointing multiple representatives, you can have them acting jointly, where they must act together. You can make it so they can act separately, so either one can act at any time. Or you can have a staggered or consecutive appointment where you have your primary representative, and then if that person cannot act, then you have your alternate or backup representative. So it really depends on the wishes of the adult. The adult is the term we use for the person making the representation agreement. That's part of the conversation I have with them is who do you want to appoint, and how do you want to structure their appointment?
Okay, so to get into that and/or type of phrasing?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Now, we're going to get into a little bit more meat here. I'm well out of my territory here, so I want you to guide me through this gently. Types of representation agreements. Now, in my notes here, I've got like a Section 9 and a Section 7. I have no clue what a Section 9 is, a Section 7. That sounds like a health condition, that I might have. But I know, in these documents, it's something a little bit different. So could you explain that?
Of course, yeah. So the section numbers that Section 9 and Section 7 are referring specifically to sections of the Representation Agreement Act. So these sections talk about two different types of agreements. The Section 7 representation agreement, sometimes called the standard representation agreement, it's designed for people with diminished capacity. So we would typically only use that if a person's already suffered from the onset of, say, something like dementia, or maybe they've had a stroke that's affected their mental capacity, or maybe it could be a younger person who's just turned 19 and maybe they have some developmental or learning disabilities, so the parents need to now take over for them. Perhaps when the child was a minor, it was easier for them, but now that the child's become an adult, they need something official in place to allow them to represent that child in their banking or their taxes or what have you. So a Section 7 representation agreement can be used in those situations. The capacity requirements are much lower than it would be for a Section 9, which is more designed for a person with full capacity.
Oh, very good. Wow, that was more than what I expected. Wow. I know I have got lots of questions, but I want to get through this and try and.
I should mention one more thing
Sure.
about the Section 7 versus Section 9. So one big difference is that a Section 9 is only will allow for healthcare authority.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whereas a Section 7 grants both healthcare and routine financial management. And the reason is because if a person has full capacity, it's expected that they would get a power of attorney for financial matters and a Section 9 representation agreement for healthcare matters. But if a person has diminished capacity, there's no alternative to the power of attorney under the Power of Attorney Act. So the Section 7 was designed to kind of provide authority in both realms, financial and medical. Not to the same extent that a person would get with full capacity under a power of attorney, but
Sure.
it's pretty close.
Okay, all right. Gets them past one door, like, that might have been closed earlier.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Now, this is a really interesting question because you and I and Debbie, we went through this as well. When you have the client in your office, and one of the things that you brought to our attention, okay, is that you have to determine what the capacity is of the client, because you don't want to get yourself into a situation where that person is being coerced. Is that a good word maybe to use?
Yeah, well, undue influence is one issue. Capacity is also an issue. So they can be related, but I would consider them separate issues.
Okay.
So every time we do these documents, we always have to confirm capacity. And we do that by asking a series of questions, just designed to make sure that they understand what they're asking for, and that they meet these requirements. Sometimes these requirements are legislated, like under the Power of Attorney or the Representation Agreement Act, and sometimes it's like a creature of common law or case law, like with wills. So that's capacity. Coercion or undue influence is another issue that we have to deal with sometimes, and that's where somebody else is kind of influencing the will maker or the adult to appoint them maybe as the executor or as an attorney, or to make them a beneficiary, and the adult may not necessarily want to do that, or what undue influence is really about is that the person is using their influence over the adult to try to force them or coerce them to do something.
Sure.
So, for example, a child that maybe the adult or mom relies on to buy groceries for them, or to provide, to pick up their prescriptions. They may not want to upset that child, and then that child asks that mom to do something, or to change the will. It's difficult for the mom. It may put the mom in a difficult position, right? To say yes, to say no to if they feel dependent on this child.
I see.
Yeah.
So in my notes here, I've got Section 9 and Section 7 again. How does that apply into the capacity end of it?
Well, so for Section 9, the main thing is we want to make sure that they understand what a representation agreement is, what it can be used for, and to make sure they're clear on who they want to appoint. There's a few other things as well, but those are the main things. A Section 7, a person is not expected to have full capacity. What we want to see is that the adult expresses a need for help, and that the person that wants to be appointed, that they have a relationship with the adult that's characterized by trust. So usually a close family member.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. All right. All right, so in my notes here is that What happens if someone becomes incapable and if they do not have a representation agreement?
So we sometimes will suggest the Section 7, but that's not always adequate, depending on the needs. For healthcare decisions, it's going to cover most things, but some things might not be covered. So if a Section 7 representation agreement is not viable, then the last resort would be applying for a committéship, which is done through the courts. So a person would then, at that point, would have to hire a lawyer to make this application for committéship. It's submitted to the Supreme Court. There's a whole process to it, and then when granted, the person who made the application becomes the comité, which is basically means they're basically the adult's guardian at that point. They can do anything on behalf of the adult that the adult could have done themselves. And depending on the limits of the court order, it can be just healthcare decisions, it can be financial decisions, or both.
Okay, well, so this committéship, it's the client that applies to the court, or the notary that applies to the court?
It would be usually client's family member that's doing it. Notaries, we don't make court applications like that, so
Okay.
they would need to have a lawyer kind of represent them in that motion. And usually it would be the family member or whoever's wanting to be in the role of the comité. Usually they're the ones who kind of get the process started.
I see, okay. And that makes sense. You know, that kind of takes you out of the legal loophole if something were to go wrong as well.
You mean for the
Committéship?
For the person applying to be the comité?
Yeah. Because if you applied for it, you would be the person applying for it as opposed to the client. You, the notary.
Oh well, notaries. We just don't typically get involved in any court matters.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have any of those kinds of. We don't have a background in filing applications with the court.
Sure.
There's specific requirements that have to be met and procedures, and
Yep.
that's just not really part of what notaries do.
So
Fortunately,
Yeah. So you would guide the client to go to a lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay, at that point,
yeah.
because at some particular point you have to decide. Okay, do I need a notary or do I need a lawyer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right. The next one. All right, we're getting down to the end here, and I think they're getting easier.
Okay.
Okay, at least from my perspective, they look that way. Changing or revoking a representation agreement.
So we don't usually do changes or amendments to representation agreements. At least I've never done one. We usually would just, if somebody wants to change the representation agreement, usually we revoke the old one and do a new one for them. Revocation is basically, it's done almost in the same format as doing a representation agreement. They sign a document saying that they wish to revoke it. The revocation has to be given to all the named representatives.
Okay, interesting. So that's a very interesting question that I have. I have a health representation agreement. I want to change it, so I have to revoke it. Are these documents registered somewhere? So for an example, if I came to you and your company and did a representation agreement, and then I moved to Calgary, I can come back to you, but it'd be more convenient for me to go to a local notary. So could a local notary revoke that document?
There's nothing stopping them from doing that, but because these documents are creatures of provincial legislation, typically legal practitioners in other provinces don't really want to get involved with that. So they probably would say, go back to your notary in BC and have them do the revocation. And once that's done, we'll do a new representation agreement for you here. Now, in other provinces, they can be called different things. For example, I believe in Ontario, they're called like medical power of attorney.
Sure.
I'm not sure what they're called in other provinces, but yeah, very similar in nature, but they can be called something different across
Never even thought about a name change in a different province. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. All right. So, but they can be changed, they can be revoked, so that you can start the process again, because you might not like the person anymore who's being your representative, and you want to have someone else.
Yeah, relationships change, family dynamics change. We have people coming in all the time to make changes. Usually for the wills and powers of attorney, but sometimes even representation agreements.
Okay, all right. I think you kind of answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways just to make sure. How does a representation agreement end?
So it can end by being revoked. It can end if all the representatives resign, or it can end when the adult passes away. Or it also can end once a commutation has been granted. So if a court order has been granted, and it'll also terminate any previous appointments, like by power of attorney or a representation agreement.
So that's you know, every answer that you give spurs another question. I mean, we could be here all day, I'm sure, but I got to keep this down to a dull roar here. Now you mentioned, okay, that the person doing the representation can resign. I've never heard that word used in these documents before.
Yep.
So what does the representative have to do to resign?
That's a little bit easier. So the representative would simply have to give written notice to the adult and also to any other representatives named in the agreement.
So would the notary be involved at that point?
Typically, no. In fact, somebody just called our office today about that as well. So no, we don't usually get involved in resignations because it's not something that has to be witnessed by a notary or really anybody.
Okay.
It's just simply writing a letter and giving it and making sure it's delivered properly to the appropriate parties. That's enough.
Okay. Becomes like a librarian's job now, keeping track of all this paperwork.
Yeah.
Right. Now, you've touched on this before, but I'd really like to know a little bit more about it. Undue influence. That is, to me, a very serious issue. And I think we need to have a little further discussion on that one because that is dangerous.
It can be very dangerous, yeah. So it's something that we have to be conscious about in every meeting. And usually it's not an issue if a person's coming in by themselves, but when somebody comes in accompanied by another person, even if it's a person that they're close with, like a child, we have to be conscious about, who is our client? Who are you truly representing? Whose interests are we looking out for here? And who should we be listening to?
Right.
So a very a standard procedure is let's say if a person comes in with their child, I will start by kind of introducing myself, answering questions as a group, and then I'll ask the child to step out, so I can interview the parent alone. In that way, I can ensure that the parent is not being influenced. Now, it's not bulletproof. There could be things happening in the background that we're not aware of, but we try to keep an eye out for that. I try to get a sense of whether this is something the person really wants to do. Sometimes I get this. Sometimes they'll straight up tell me, like, I'm only here. Start asking them questions, and they'll in one way or another basically say, I'm only here because my son or my daughter wants me here, or I'm only making this change because my daughter wants me to, or my son wants me to. And those kinds of things are huge red flags. And at that point, I'll ask a couple more questions. And there's been a few times where I said, you know what, we're stopping this right now. Clearly this is not something you want to do. We're not going to move forward with this. And now I'm gonna go talk to your daughter and let him know that we're not moving forward.
Right. So this would be a child getting the health representation for a parent.
Yeah. Now, usually
or an older person.
Yes, but honestly, with representation agreements, it's never been an issue because there's really no benefit to a person getting that authority over another person to make healthcare decisions. Where it's more of an issue is with powers of attorney and wills, which maybe we can talk about in the next couple of interviews.
In the next video, right? Yeah. Nice lead into the next video, by the way.
Nice segue.
So the very last note I have, on my paper here, it just says process. What does it mean, process? Process what?
Oh, the process of getting a representation agreement? We try to make it as easy as possible, and I think a lot of offices probably maybe do it similarly. Usually we can get it all done in one appointment if we're doing it at the office. So let's say you come in for a representation agreement. Let's say you and Deb came in together. You come in, you sit down, I explain to you what the document is, make sure you understand it. I answer your questions. I go through my little questionnaire to prove that you both have capacity, and then I take your wishes. So you tell me who you want to appoint. Okay. So assuming you're appointing each other, I'll also probably suggest that maybe you have another person on there, like one of your kids, something just in case something happens to both of you. We talk a bit about that. Once I have all the information and I kind of got your wishes down, I just have the document drawn up, come back, and we sign it.
Oh, wow.
And if, let's say you're appointing a child and that child's not able to attend that appointment, that's not a problem. We just hold it at the office until that child is able to swing by, sign, and then we make copies and put a little package together.
So basically it's a question of getting everybody either together at the beginning or individually along the way.
Yeah.
So it could take one day if everybody's there, or it could take multiple days depending on how many representatives that you have.
Exactly.
And where they are located, their work hours, their free time, so yeah, process, it is a process.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's all, if everybody comes to the same appointment, it's all done in one day. Sometimes we've held on to these documents for years waiting for kids or representatives to come and sign, and that's not a problem. We've been doing that forever. And sometimes, let's say they have two kids, they want to appoint them both, and they both live in other provinces. Well,
right.
We're just going to wait for them to, and then worst case scenario, we can always send it out to those kids to sign in their locally.
Right.
However, they'll need to find a notary or lawyer to sign with in the case of powers of attorney. And then it just costs them money. Representation agreements don't need to be, the representative's signature doesn't need to be witnessed, so those can be mailed to them. They can sign it and mail it back. So that's
Okay.
a little less complicated.
That's good to know too, yeah, because that's what a notary pretty much does, is notarize that signature,
Yeah.
or authorizes or witness that signature.
Yeah, that's probably our primary function. Is we're
Yeah.
official witness. For them.
I haven't been in your office, but when I lived in Vancouver area, yes, that office is very well used for witnessing signatures.
Yeah.
Been through that process. Wow. Adif, I've got no more questions unless you've got a question that you want to throw to yourself, to add to this. I just want to maybe add one point. Do you have anything more that you want to add to that?
No, I think that sounds good to us.
Okay. Now, these were the short answers. Is that correct?
Oh, I could yammer on for hours if you like.
Yeah, yeah. So if a person was to watch this video and felt that their answer to their scenario wasn't answered, or the question wasn't answered
Yeah.
to their scenario, could we send them to your website? Is there more information on your website?
Yes, we have a lot of information on our website. So we have a FAQ page, which is frequently asked questions, and we also have another page under our personal planning tab, which explains all these documents in much greater detail. And I wrote it myself, and I tried very hard to address any concerns that somebody might have. And if you're not finding your answers there, you can always call or email our office, and one of the notaries will get in touch with you and try to answer those questions.
So that's all part of the process.
Yep.
Part of the process is go through what we just did on this interview.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't answer your question, go to the website, because when I went to the website and I got it all printed out here, you've got the short answer, and then you've got this long answer with some nice examples.
Yeah.
And somebody might find their scenario fits one of those examples. So if it doesn't fit any of the video, doesn't fit the answer on the website, on the long answer, then that's the time that a client, soon-to-be client, should make an appointment to come and talk to you and get a more detailed answer. And at that point, you could direct them either to make another appointment for that particular document, or they might need maybe a lawyer. You could direct them that direction?
Absolutely, yeah.
right?
Yeah, I'm happy to meet with people and listen to their needs and try to determine if it's something we can help with. And if it's not something we can help with, I'll try to suggest, what their next steps might be.
Right, right. Yeah, because a lawyer is the next step, and it's also the more expensive
Yes.
step as well. Wow. Wow, my head is throbbing right now with all this newfound knowledge, I tell you. I mean, I've really enjoyed going through this. I know that you and I have gone through this, but you go through it so quickly, you don't digest a lot of it, because you make it so easy. In the office, you do make it easy. But when you go through all the stuff on the website, you're going, oh no, I never thought of that, and your head starts to throb.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, and at the end, you're wondering, okay, do I really want to go through this? And this might be why people steer away from getting these documents, because their knowledge level and their interest level might not be there.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that through this video, we encourage people to get these documentations, and if not right away, at least go watch the video and go through the website where there's more detailed answers.
Yeah.
And maybe make an appointment with yourself. How many notaries are in your office?
In the Chilliwack office, we have 4 notaries.
4.
And in Abbotsford, we have 2.
Oh, okay. And in Hope, it's a part-time.
Hope is we send one of our Chilliwack notaries out once a week there currently, but hopefully we'll be spending some more time out there soon.
Oh, good. Good to know. Good to know. All right, Adolf, I don't know if I can answer any more questions. I tell you, my head is just throbbing right now. I got a lot to digest. I'm going to go back over the detailed, information as well, just to see if I can digest it better.
Sure.
Because like I said, there is a lot to go through.
Hopefully I did a good job explaining this stuff. Part of my job is to take these complicated things and all this information from different resources and try to make it, package it in a way that's easy for everyday people to understand.
Sure.
So hopefully I've done that.
Yes, yes. And just to end the video on this note, I can add to the notes on the YouTube, because they will be posted on YouTube for anybody to watch and to share the link with others that might be interested. And on my own personal Facebook pages, I'm going to put the links there, and I can add more information there as well, like where to get that detailed information, contact information to the various offices that you have in the lower, in the Fraser Valley, actually, not lower mainland. And that would be a good start for people as well. So, Adolf, I can't thank you enough. You have fulfilled my dream of doing this video for a long time. We've been talking about it for a while, and because of the noise out in the back of our place, we just have not been able. We've been blessed with very, very little noise today, so our timing was good. But I have to thank you because you picked the days. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you choosing me for this, and thank you so much for having me here in your lovely home and for setting all this up. This is very, very impressive.
Yes, it is very, very nice. I tell you, it's a good learning experience for both of us. Adolf, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.